Hello, my name's MaLea Milstead. I'm going to walk you through my curriculum development for this course. I chose this particular development toward the end because I used to teach computer courses back in our Training for Business and Industry division 5-6 years ago for about 12-15 years. So it's of interest to me. But curriculum development, it allows teachers to create a guide to put the focus on students. It gives a variety of learning activities and experiences the student will have under the institution's direction that can contribute to the student's growth and help accomplish their goals. Curriculum should also prepare the student with courses and experiences to prepare them for life experiences and give them a career. The curriculum should be a structured document with details of the educational program and expectations. It should contain designed interaction between instructors and students to produce the desired learning. And it also contains philosophy, goals, objectives, learning experiences, and instructional resources and assessments. In short, it outlines what the student should know, what they should be able to do, and support the instructor in completing those goals. In the process analysis, the first thing that needs to be done is the planning part. A committee of teachers and administrators, members of the public, and students should be formed. The committee will need to research recent issues and trends of the discipline, district-wide and across the nation. And through this research, they can identify key issues and fulfill the needs of the assessment and philosophy that is needed to develop the curriculum. Other factors to be considered in the planning is disciplines and test scores. When all the data is collected from the variety of methods, needs assessment, research, etc., the committee takes this data and uses it for the basis of the curriculum, from the philosophy to goals to assessment. Secondly, the developers need to articulate and develop the curriculum. Its philosophy will be the guideline to provide a unifying framework that will justify and direct the disciplined instruction. This is what helps develop the goals and objectives of the curriculum, which should be realistic and attainable. And grade level and course objectives are the core of the curriculum and need to be organized and designed to specific grade levels as well for the curriculum to be successful and smooth transition between. Thirdly, implementing the curriculum. The committee should oversee the implementation, updating, and evaluation of the curriculum. Time and support are needed for the implementation of the curriculum. Any innovation introduced into a system is important because change is sometimes hard, and sometimes it can take up to 2 years for teachers to implement and feel at ease with the new curriculum. And the last step is evaluation. Updating the curriculum guides and to share the information through grade level meetings. These meetings are to share materials, activities, units, assessments, and student work and assessments. They are all essential steps toward making a guide for effective program implementation. The curriculum development cycle starts and ends with careful evaluation of the program. Test scores of the students is a true reflection also for an evaluation or assessment, along utilizing surveys to evaluate the program as well. Content standard analysis. This is content standards according to grade levels, describing specific content areas that define the learning standards and knowledge learned with each discipline. Alabama has 16 career clusters outlined, and there's requirements that can be set that you have to look into that is set by the federal and state government for each of those requirements. Some considerations for the scope of the curriculum content that can affect the scope also. Some additional factor is your educational settings, occupational settings, content determination strategies. In the educational setting, it's a factor to consider determining a certain strategy is used. For example, what is the current educational philosophy of the school system that you're in or the state that you're in? Those are questions that have to be answered up front. And that's just an example of something in the educational setting. And then let's think about the occupational setting that you have to think about as well. There's questions like, is the occupation clearly identifiable? Is there a need for this occupation? So those are things also to consider of your standards. Content determination strategies, there are various ones, philosophical and introspection. They're both can be subjective, but philosophical is used in academics mainly because it's structured around a specific philosophy or a set of them. Introspection is used to examine personal experiences and knowledges to bring those into the curriculum as well. And DECM, content determines the uses of occupational experts basically and what they know to develop the content. And we went through and did a sheet of skills, skill profile sheet for a specific job, and that's where those experts come in. And then a task force analysis is a very good strategy to use because it helps identify the tasks performed by workers in a specific occupation. They are all aids to determine the development of the curriculum. The task identified and verified needed to perform a certain job. That task analysis, to do a good task analysis, you need to review relevant literature. It looks into developing the occupational inventory, selecting worker samples, administering the inventory, and then analyzing and collecting the information. Then the next part of developing this was our goals, outcomes, and objectives. Goals are to give direction and framework for the development of outcomes and objectives and are unmeasurable. They are a lot of goals already set out there at the federal, state, and local levels, and it's important to understand though that goals gives purpose to our objects. And objects can be general or specific. General are unmeasured and specific are measurable. Measurable outcomes are those that can actually be assessed. They have computable data tied to them. So when developing your curriculum, it is important to have several measurable outcomes to ensure that the student's performance measures up to what you're looking for. General objectives tend to be used more in a career tech education. For example, it's referred to in the book saying like a relative related knowledge of a certain occupation. Instead of being specific, it's just relative knowledge, related knowledge, and that's hard to measure, and that's why we were calling them general and unmeasurable. Specific objectives or performance objectives are measurable. They do have data tied to them, and precise, that a learner must be able to exhibit. Now, I have an example of my curriculum that I developed for Microsoft Excel, and I have my objectives listed where the student will use advanced calculations and formulas in a spreadsheet and work with several tools to analyze the data. The student will organize data into tables, present data as charts, enhance the visual appeal with formatting and adding graphic objects. It also talks about reading certain chapters of the book that will be covered, your skills checklist, and then you have your lesson objectives. Lesson 1 is using advanced formulas where the student will name and use sales and range names, formulate to calculate data across a worksheet, functions, logical and lookup functions to analyze data. And then reading and activities, you'll read lesson 1 on calculating data with formulas, complete the workbook lesson for lesson 1, view the instructional video, and there's a lab practice on objectives for lesson 1. And at the end is an assessment, complete lesson 1 follow-up. We have a lesson 2 objectives where data organization through worksheets and table data. The student will create and modify tables using table formats, working with worksheets and table data by sorting and filtering, and use advanced functions. The reading and activities, they'll read lesson 2 on calculating data with formulas, complete the workbook lessons for lesson 2, view instructional video, lab practice on objectives for lesson 2, and assessment, complete lesson 2 follow-up. Lesson 3 objectives, data presentation through charts. The student will create a chart, modify a chart, format a chart. Reading and activities, read lesson 1 on calculating data with formulas, complete the workbook lesson for lesson 3, view instructional video, lab practice on objectives for lesson 3, complete lesson 3 follow-up. Lesson 4, using pivot tables, slicers, and pivot charts to analyze data. The student will create and manipulate a pivot table, filter pivot table data by using slicers, analyze data using pivot charts. Reading and activities, read lesson 1 on calculating data with formulas, complete the workbook lessons for lesson 4, view instructional video, lab practice on objectives for lesson 4, assessment, complete lesson 4 follow-up. And finally, lesson 5 objectives, adding graphic objects. The student will insert pictures and clip art graphics and modify them, draw shapes and modify shapes, use smart art graphics and illustrate workflow. Grouping and layering graphic objects. Reading and activities, read lesson 4 on calculating data with formulas, complete the workbook lessons for lesson 5, view instructional video, lab practice on objectives for lesson 5, assessment, complete lesson 5 follow-up. Also, my instructional strategies of each of these lessons in lesson 1 using advanced formulas, the strategies, theory by PowerPoint lecture, hands-on activities and multiple choice tests. The justification lecture is performed in the class where theory is taught with a lab setting where individual has access to a computer. Videos will be viewed. The instructor will demonstrate the skills and the activity and then allow the students to work and practice through the same activity as individuals, but in a group setting for discussion. The activities allows for critical thinking, short quizzes at the end of the lecture, and activities are given on the topic. And that is the same strategy I used in lesson 2, 3, and 4. I truly enjoyed this class. Again, I started out kind of weak, not understanding. But I feel like I have a good idea of how to develop curriculum.